Hey Fitzy here, back at it again with another one. Do you ever have them pesky seams that are always rusty in your project? The bottom panel is well into the top panel and it ends up rusting through. You have holes there and a lot of amounts of rust and everything in there. But you'd like to retain them, but you can't buy the panel. I'm going to show you how to make it. Retain the seam, make the panel. Stick around. So let's get started. Now, here's what we got here. It's early 70s Datsun pickup. I think the people call them 610s, I think it is. 72, 73, that model. But anyway, I got the box here now. You've seen me do videos on the rocker panels and the hood and floor pans on this same truck. I'm finally getting at the box here now. So what I got here now is I got an issue here where she's all rotted out in here. You can see the rust damage there. All that's gone there. The shape is all gone out of it. And she's gone up through here as well. The problem you got with these here, this is a factory seam. And there's 3 layers of steel. There's this layer, and then there's the floor pan on the inside. That all welds together in this one area. Now the floor pan here is also bad. Right? It's also gone along here. So I'm going to replace that as well. So I'll be getting into that later. But for now, I'm just going to concentrate on getting the 2 panels done. I'll get the outer sections of the panel done. This is the worst section on the truck, is right here. Back here is a bit more, but I'll get into that. It's basically going to be the same process here as what it is here. So I'm going to get started on it now. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get some metal cleaned up. I'm going to start making the bottom. I'm not going to remove nothing. I've said that before about templates. I'm going to go ahead now and start in by cleaning up a piece that's going to go down about here somewhere. And turn around and start shaping that piece there. But first things, I'm going to clean up a piece of steel. Okay, I went ahead and I had this sheet of steel here that I had. I cut a piece off it that was a little bit longer and a little bit wider. Basically, I got about a 1/2 inch higher and a 1/2 inch longer than what it actually is. Now, the thing with this is 18 gauge steel. A lot of people keep asking me what I make my panels out of. This is 18 gauge. You can turn around, look at this here, and you can see 18 gauge and how thick it is on this here. Now, this truck is 24 gauge, okay, from factory. I've after doing some measurements and everything on it, and 24 gauge fits in around her, and that is extremely thin metal. It's very hard to work with. Why do I do it with 18 gauge and not do it with 24? Simply because you're going to be doing a lot of grinding. And if you grind a bit of this material off and turn it into 20 gauge, you're fine, okay? You're still within a thing. This is a lot easier to weld for the simple fact that it's thicker, okay? It's nicer to work with. I find that the slider gauge metals, 24s and everything, it ends up going right wavy, very easy. It's like, you know, working with tin foil. Now, I got the piece laid in place and I lined it up here, right along the edge here. You can see it's flush to the edge of that there. So there's my edge there, right along there that I'm going to put a 90 degree on there. I laid that in place there. Then I drilled 2 locations down below that I can put it with the clicos. Now, you could use screws here, but one of the disadvantages of using screws, and I've run into it over the years, is every time you screw it in and take it off and screw it in and take it off, you end up stripping one of them out. And especially the 22 gauge, you'll end up stripping that out, the 24 gauge. So I like using the clicos. You can buy them online, they're cheap as dirt. They're great for this type of stuff. Now I have a location that will always return to, so I'll build everything off of that. Down here I got to put a roll on it. I'm not concerned about it right yet. I don't know if I'm going to take it this far. I might trim that off a bit up here yet. I don't know. But what I'm concerned about now is getting this shape here, if you look at it, marking all this here and bending that and getting that shape to go along there so I can work on getting this edge the way I want it. But by doing it this way now, I have a location to return it to, and then when I cut this panel off, I can lay this in place and say, okay, here's where it got to be capped over. So there's always a good thing to, when you're building a panel, that you're going to be putting on, taking off, putting on, taking off. A couple of random holes in good solid metal. It doesn't matter if it's in the middle of it or not, because it's just holding it in place. You can weld them up after the fact. But it'll save you a lot of headache because it'll always return to the exact same location every single time. Now right here you can see I got a bit of a roll, and it goes from here and then it goes down into the bottom edge here that I can push in there. I'm going to mark this now, line up along here on the angle that it's going to be, and I'm going to work on rolling this edge out around here, rolling it in so it fits better. Now all I went and did is I marked the 2 points, drew a straight line on it. Now the problem with this, I want to bend it this way. So I had to mark both edges on the opposite side and draw another line again. So all I'm going to do is just put it into brace and bend that up on a fairly big angle. Because I know there's a sharp edge on it. Now I'll just pull it out of it, like so. And I'll just slowly, I won't clamp it or anything, I'll just slowly start bringing it back. I have to work this now when it gets it over in the vise. I'll work making this better. And as you can see here, I got it cut and rolled. Now it's a very sharp edge, but I'm going to work this edge now so it fits better on the car. All I'm doing, I got T-dowel put in the vise, and I'm just going to dolly it around and go back and fit it, and you know, go back and forth, test fit it, dolly it, and test fit it, and dolly it. Now as you can see here, over here, this comes down, it's got a roll corner on edge on it. Now I've come right down here this edge, so as part of this roll, I haven't even got it put into the panel, but I'm not going to get into it. You can see here where I got the hole for the joint, and you can see that it's all good metal up there. So I'm going to cut it off along here. Now over here I got this panel here with a hole here. It's just one less single hole here. I'm not too concerned about it, so I'm just going to come down probably say ½ an inch below the where I got the hole put to, and I'm going to mark it right along there, and I'm going to cut off the panel in along here to make this work. I've after gone over on the bench a few times now, tweaking it, changing the angle on this a couple of times, you know, back and forth, you know, take your time with it. You can see, like when you look at it this way, it's got a rolled in edge, right, as it goes along it. So, you know, don't ever think that like you're making too big of a piece, you're going to run into troubles. This is a lot easier, making a larger piece and then cutting it after the fact. It's a lot easier to remove metal than it is to make a small piece and then start piecing stuff back together again. I've learned that the hard way. So, you know, just to, you know, start with a larger piece and then go from there. So I'm going to go over here now, mark this now, and cut off this panel. So there you have it. Now you see me there going back and forth. One of the advantages of these over screws is the number of times you can take it off. You just see me putting them on there now 2 or 3 times. I've after doing this 6, 7, 8 or 9 times, putting it on, fitting it, changing angles of stuff, refitting stuff, dollying stuff. And each time I do it, I got to take it over on the bench to do it. And it's very hard to try to do on the car. So I got happy where it's 2 now, so I'm ready for that bottom piece that's ready to be installed. But this big advantage to these, if that was screws, I can guarantee you by now, them holes would be longer, this panel would be moved around. It's great if you just put it on once and you're going to hold it on and weld it on, but if you're test fitting the panel and you're going to do work to it, it's best to have these clicos. So now I'm happy where everything fits here, the way this lines up, the way this rolls off the edge here. What I got to do now is I'm going to mark it here and here and trim that section off there, and that panel's ready to go. Because I'm going to weld that right along the edge here. The edge of this here is in really good shape. So I'm just going to mark these now and cut them off. So I'm happy with this here now. You can see I got a nice edge up along here. It's flat along this edge here, going right along. and it's good along this edge here. So now I got to just push it on a few spots here. So I'm ready now that I can actually install this piece. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to remove this lower panel. I'm going to cut it off in through here because I don't need that lip anymore. And then I'm going to drill out spot welds down along here and take the panel off this way. These can be tricky. Usually drilling them out, you got to drill them out a little bit bigger because this is thin metal. I may have to replace that lip yet, I don't know. We'll see how hard it is to get it apart. But I've often been in situations where I drilled out lips like this here and mangled them that much that I ended up having to replace this entire lip. So let's hope that don't happen. So I'm going to go ahead down, I'm going to drill all these out. I only drill them out with a 1/8 drill bit and then like a 1/4 bit, and I tries to just go halfway through because I'm trying to save the inner panel. And well, it doesn't matter anyway because I'll weld up the inner panel before it puts it back together again anyway. So let's get this off here now. Now the first thing you can see, we got a panel here. We need to find the spot welds. All I've ever done is I took a grinder. You probably don't need to be as aggressive as me. An 80 grit or something like that will do it. And just clean off this panel. As you start to go, you'll actually see where the panel spot welds are. There's one there, there's one there. Here, 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 here. Let's see how right I am. Now there's lots of specialty tools, guys have talked to them on my Facebook page. The problem you got with the spot weld tools is they're not so much ready available. You got order them online or whatnot, and I've used them in the past in the collision industry. I find that when they go dull, they're no good anymore. And it always goes dull when you're in the middle of drilling out 25 or 100 spot welds. Then you're stuck like, what am I going to do? I've gotten into the habit of drilling them out with a 1/8 drill bit and then a 1/4 bit, and that's it. I drill them out that size so I can try to chew them off. Usually they're smaller, 3/16, but I like to try to grab and break them off as best I can. I won't drill right through. I'll drill part of the way and then I'll start working my way along, see if I can get them to break clear that way so I can save the panel in on the back side. Sometimes you can see him actually letting go. You heard that one just popped. Now I got them all drilled out. We got to break them clear from the back side. There's a number of different ways you can do this. It's best to do this by hand. Air tools, like using an air chisel or something on this here, it is a nightmare. These here, don't even use my knife. You'll mangle the dead out of everything. Now, if you haven't got any tools, this is something I made a long time ago. Just a piece of flat bar. You can make thinner ones. Piece of flat steel and grind at the end on an angle so it fitted behind it. This is pretty old and worn out here now. I haven't used it in a while, but you can make something like this up pretty simple. Just a bit of flat stock and probably use thinner stuff, and then just grind the edge on an angle so you can fit it in it, make it nice and sharp, and then go from there. But what I've liked the most is a cold chisel, like this here, an air chisel tip with the curved edge on it, because it's got a tendency to grab everything, and you can see it's tapered back on both sides. And I'll use the hammer on that, and just take my time and hammer down through it. you go. All the spot welds are let go. I didn't mangle that too bad. Now I'll just cut that off. Got the panel off. I had a little brace on the bottom there. I had to let go of the bolt on it, let that go, it was fine. But what I'm going to do here first now is I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to clean this up. I'm going to clean it up on the inside. The surface rust here, I'm not going to be concerned about that right yet because he's going to be undercutting it or whatnot. So I'm going to get all this cleaned up and see what I'm up against before I start making that top piece installed. So here it is, I cleaned it all up. I'll be cutting all this off, so it don't really matter up here. And I went and done some repairs on the panel. I thought I was going to have weld pieces in the bottom side of this here. There was a couple of pinholes here, so all I did is I drilled them out and I welded them up. As you can see, hard to see there. This panel is pretty solid. And I was more than I expected. Had a little spot here and then it was cracked. And down here on the bottom it's cracked here and had to weld that up. And I just turned around and cleaned and dressed everything up. So all this is a good solid panel now, all the way around. And I'm ready now to go up here, and up here you can remember there was 3 holes. I welded up that 3rd hole and grinded that off, so that'll be done. So when I cuts the piece in there, it'll go right across there right nice. So now I'm ready to move on. Then I got this cleaned up. In here, if you want to, I'm going to end up painting in here. If you want to, you can put like a rust converter on it. I would not recommend sandblasting this stuff. Sheet metal, it is a nightmare. People are hung up on rust, okay? Rust is there, you just gotta find ways around it. You gotta clean it up. If you can weld to it, it's solid, okay? You can tell when rust is bad. If you start to weld it and you're just constantly blowing holes, well, that's the problem. You can get rust converters, good paints, and paint all this here. The only problem with all these old cars, the reason why they rusted out, there was never any paint put on them. People don't realize that. I have people talking about, you know, clean it up and sandblast it and all this type of stuff. If you sandblast this panel here now, you might as well just throw it out. You might as well just go ahead and try to make yourself a new panel. The key here is trying to save as much of the panels as we can. It's not a very complicated panel, but it is something that, like, to me, that's a solid panel there. This car here, when it's all restored and done, this will outlast whatever was ever done to the truck from factory. It may not meet some people's criteria in the way I cleaned it up. You can get rust converters and put on this to stop it, to lock it in. That's fine, but if you go sandblasting it, I can tell you, you'll destroy this panel. Anyway, enough of my rambling. Now I gotta fit this piece on top here, get it fit in place, and get the top lip made. Now, I've gone ahead and I clamped that back in place. Again, I used them 2 spots again. As you can see, here's my lip up on top. Now, if you look down straight across it this way, it's straight along here, around this lip here. But as it gets over here, it turns and goes out. Now, the big thing I'm working on is trying to make sure that this edge here is nice and straight to here. And you can see that this kicks off and then it kicks in around here. I can probably do it in one piece, strip it along there, but I'm really hung up on making this edge nice and straight, right, up over to this area here. So what I got done is I got the strip of metal that I originally cut off the top piece, and there's one edge on this here that's a perfectly straight edge. So what I'll end up doing is I'll basically weld this on here, like so, because I know that's a straight edge, right along there, over as far as this section here, and then I'll weld another section in here, just because of the shape. I want to get the shape right nice and everything. I want to make sure that, like, if I just welded a large strip right across this here, it's very hard for me to get this here, make sure that it's not straight along right from here to here, because this is crucial on the truck. From here out, it doesn't matter. So I'll do this upper section in 2 sections. People say, well, why don't you just bend it on a 90? Well, it'll be hard to work this section here and then try to get everything to work. I like doing my edges like on a welded section because I get a lot nicer edge than if you bent it and then tried to cut off it and you tweaked it up and bent it. You'll end up with a kink down through here. Don't overthink it. Just lay the edges on and weld them on. So I'm going to go ahead now and fit that up there. and I'm going to tack weld that in place. So here's all I went and did. I put the straight edge on, I tacked it, welded across there, let it hang off over there. I went underneath the bench, got a scrapped piece of steel, and I put it on the angle there. I trimmed it up so it fit and butt welded here nice. That's going to stay still for me. So I was going to butt weld nice here. I tack welded it on, I come up here, then this tips down here. All it is just welded it on there. So now I got that entire piece done. What I can do now is I can take this panel off and I can weld it on the outside, weld it on the inside, grind and dress the outside of it, trim up this edge here, do a nice job on it, and get it ready to install. So I'm going to go ahead now and I'll weld all this up inside and out. So here it is. I got it all welded up. I got it all cooled down. Still a bit warm, but I can handle it. As you can see, the piece is still on the end. I just chopped the end of it so I can find this inner rolled edge, so I can weld that up there. And I got it all welded on the outside edge there. I wasn't worried about cutting any of that off, making that fit nice yet. And then I went ahead then and also welded it on the inside. So all the inside edges all welded, the bottom, inside corners. So I can get ready now to grind and dress all this off. Okay. You can see now the angle that that's on, the way that goes. I'm not going to cut none of this off yet until I get this dressed off. I'm going to grind a flat here, and I'm going to grind a flat here, so I got a sharp edge here, so I got a line to go by. If you just start grounding this off and doing that type of thing with it, you're going to end up having a real rough edge here. So if you grind a flat here, and then grind a flat here, you're left with a very sharp edge. Then it doesn't matter just putting a real nice little roll on it, so it actually looks like a rolled edge, right? And you haven't got to worry about grinding through it because you got the back side of it welded here now. Okay. Some have asked about how long it takes to do different things. It took me close to an hour. I say 45 minutes to weld this all up inside and out. A lot of your time making these panels, it's grinding and welding, okay? That's most of your time. Fitting and stuff like that as well, but like, you know, you spend a lot of time grinding. And like some people, they cut corners because all they do is just weld stuff up and then they just put it together and they knock the head off it and haul a bit of filler over it. But if it takes time to do these panels to the degree that we do them here, and that's doing nice edges and stuff like that. This seam here is critical for me. I want this seam to look really nice on this truck. Whether the customer wants to take it and fill it over it, well, that's up to him. But I'm always one for seams. I've said it in a few other videos before. When I don't see seams on a vehicle, I see a lot of filler in them. Here it is. I figured I'd stop in the middle of it to show you. You can actually see where I just grinded up on it. Grinded it all flat along here. Like so. So that's nice and flat. But when you stand it up here, you can still see it is welded on the top side along here. I haven't grinded the top yet. But you come back here and I started to grind the top. And you can see the nice sharp edge I got on it. See a nice sharp edge? And if you look on the edge of it here, lots of welding still in there because of the weld in the inside here. So, you know, you got a lot of material there. You haven't got to worry about that edge going weak on you because you're welded on the inside as well. So now all I'm going to do is I'm just going to finish grinding that off along there now. And dressing that up. I'll get that looking good. This edge looking good before I trims that. I always do that. If you trim this now, you're not going to know because you really can't see your edge. There it is, all grinded off and dressed. You look down it, see how nice and straight it is. Now the rolled edge rolls off on the end there. See the way it goes? Just a simple old grinder. All I'm using is an air grinder with a 24 grit grinding pad on it. That's it. Nothing fancy. So now that I got that in there, now I can go in here and you can actually see how wide that is. And what I've noticed on the original panel is that it looked like that the panel wasn't very narrow, and it came across here and just went straight off. Is all it did. You can see it here, right? This seems like that's the width there, but it gets narrow as it gets back here. So that's all I'll do is I'll put a straight edge now right along here, and I'll just chop that clean right off on the original panel. Right here. So the original lip is on. I'll put a tape mark now right along that there, and I'll just cut that right off. There you have it. I went and tipped off the end of it there because I noticed it was like it on the panel, and I just trimmed it off. It wasn't a very wide lip on it. But now we have the replacement panel that will go right here, like so. Now I'll just clamp right back on there again, and you can see we got a nice top and everything on it now. And all I'll do now is I'll do the cutting butt on that there. Now this here is going to drop down a small bit because where I lapped that over there on the top. So I'm going to leave that alone, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to trim up the top and slide this down off of these holes here a small bit. So this slides down a little tiny bit. So the holes are off, and then I'll just turn around and I'll tack weld it in place so I can do the cutting butt on it. Now all I went and did is, I'm after trimming it, but I'm going to show you what I got done. Is I got to clamp back in them holes again, so that's in the exact same location. The issue with it is when you make this top piece, you're making it on top of the original one, which I've after cutting off, which is that piece there. Problem with this is you got to move down the thickness of the metal, so these here will be no good. What I ended up doing then is I just went ahead and I trimmed off about 1/4 of an inch of the top edge of it, so this could slide down without an issue. All the panels are still there, the rest of it's still there, so I want to clean it up so this is going to have room to move down. Now here's all I went and did. I got the panel put in place again, I got the click go taken out, and if you look closely in there, you can actually see where I slid the panel down, and it's pretty well the thickness of the panel itself. So I slid that down there, clamped it on, and done the same thing here. You can see how much I slid it down. Right there. Hard to see there. There you go. You have to see how far the panel has slid down. There. And there. So now I'll go ahead and I'll put a few tacks on this along here and get that ready to do the cutting butt on it. That's all I went and did. As I got tacked in place there now. So that's all held in place. I haven't done no cutting or nothing yet. So now I can go ahead now and I'll trim down these two sides first. Here and here. And get this to fall back. As you can see the way it is here. And I'll get that to fall back there so I can weld all that up. And I'll do the same back here. I'll cut this down here so this can fall back. And then I'll start to cut this one across here and weld that panel in place. I'll show you this here now. All I did is I cut down the side here and I tack welded it there, and then I started with the cutting butt across here. You can see I cut it, and you can see that it's flush mounted here, and then over here it overlaps. Not very often I can actually show you what it looks like on the back side, but this is it here now. You can see the cut through the back panel and up through here as well. You can see where I cut it up through here. And I'll just continue on across here now, cut so far. I'll cut so far across here now on a 45-degree angle. I'll basically take the blade and cut it on an angle like that there and cut it across here so it's a nice thin gap. You can see how thin the gap is there. Going along there. And I'll weld all that up. So, I got it all cut. You can see it down here. It's all flush mounted. Going along there. Over here then I come up here and I cut it off. I got to work it a small bit here. There's a bit of a low spot right here. But all this here worked out pretty good and the line lined up. And you flip it over. Here's the piece. I got to remove that now. Okay. That's all it does. Some people have talked about having troubles getting that piece out. I usually don't. I think if you're doing flux core, you will have a lot of troubles with it. But you can see now here on the inside how much thicker the inside is than the out, which I don't mind because I got the strength there. Okay. And I'll just turn around. I'm welding that there on the inside as well, and up along here, addressing all that, and grinding all that down. There'll be a little seam across there. That'll be on the inside. You could fill that if you want. I'm more concerned with out here making this all look right. So I'm going to go ahead now and I'll start welding all this up. I'll weld every inch and then I'll come back and I'll spot weld it again. It's going to take a while to do. And I'll cool the panel, make sure it's nice and cool so I don't get too much heat in it. It's a timely process, but let's get her done. I got it all welded up. I had to control my heat some because the two different thicknesses of metals. I concentrated my heat to the 18 gauge and fed it into the 24 gauge. And like I was saying before, like when you're welding panels together, you got a tendency to just weld in the center. But if you heat this section up here and go into that, this is just like over exaggerating it, and you heat it up and do it that way, right? So that way most of your heat is in this panel here, and it makes it easier to weld slider metals. Trying to weld two slider metals together, it's very time consuming and harder. If you've got a heavier gauge steel to start from and strike your arc to that and then just feed it into it a small bit, you can control your heat better. It doesn't look pretty, but all that's being grinded down after the fact anyway. So then I went ahead, because I got the panel off, I went ahead, there was a number of spots there, I just said shag that. I said I'm just going to give that full thing a weld on the inside, and I welded my corners here and here so I can actually dress them on the outside nice and I have to worry about cutting through them. So, you know, look at the panel after it's been welded up. I haven't done nothing with that, no metal work or nothing with that. That looks pretty good there. Look down across that there. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go in, I'm going to grind and dress all this up and get this ready. I also welded up them two holes where I had the cleat goes to. So it's no big deal. They're great things to have for alignment purposes. You can see how I used them on this here. So I'm going to go ahead now and grind all this up. Quick little tip, I'm here grinding it off and I'm thinking about it. Treat your grinding the same way you do your welding, okay? When you're grinding off a panel, take your time. Don't go putting a lot of heat in it because you'll warp it up with a grinder. You don't realize that. You're thinking just that all the welding's done, you're never going to warp it again. You can put a lot of heat in these panels, okay? So, you know, grind a bit of it, come over here and move on, grind a bit of the top off of this, come back, let the panel cool down so you can touch it again and go ahead and grind it again. You grind this too much, you're going to add too much heat to it. Now, also, this is 18 gauge and that's 24 gauge. What I went and did with the grinder is when I was grinding it, all I was doing is I was grinding on the 18 gauge and just grinding the welds and coming back into the 18 gauge. I was staying away from the 24 because it's so thin. This is one of the reasons why I like using a heavier gauge metal for doing patchwork, is that I have room to grind it down. I can grind this down a lot to make this 24 gauge metal. So by using it this way here, it saves me the trouble of grinding through this here. So all I'm doing is I'm grinding this and the welds, and I'm just later on just touching it up after the fact. So I went ahead now and I got it all grinded down. Okay, there's a few small spots as you can see here. I'm going to go back and I'm going to re-weld them in here as well and get the seam all done, but there's a nice flow to it all. It looks good. All right. On the inside, all I did is I just knocked the head off it. Flush, there's a little bit of a lip here, which I don't mind. I'd assume have the strength on the back side of it anyway, right? You can do, if you're really meticulous with it, you could fiberglass over this, short strand fiberglass over it and fill it and sand it. You'll never know it was there. Same with these corners. You want to dress all them up and whatnot. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead now and I'm going to weld up these few spots here now and grind and dress them up and have this panel completed. So there it is. I got it all finished up now. I got it all, a few spots re-welded again, and I grinded it all up. We got it all done up on this edge here, so it flows down around there. What I went ahead did is I went ahead and I tidied up everything that I figured had to be done. One of the things that I noticed is where I'd done the spot welds on the ends here. Some of them were pretty rugged. I like having this edge on it all the way along, and some of them I damaged, so I went ahead and I used the pliers here, clamped them onto them, plug welded around the area, and just put an edge back on again. I cut the bottom off it here because it was really thin, and I put a new one in and put a new spot weld in it. I'll be finishing off the panels. You can see here what I got done. You can see the way I welded it up. Okay. So I like doing that because I like to finish off everything as I'm going. So this panel is now done. So now I can get ready to move on, do this upper section here that I'm going to put on it. Now, most times you would think, okay, let's weld this back on the truck and then we can start building off of that. No, that's not what I'm going to do. What I'm going to do is I'm going to build this section. I'm going to weld it to this here, get the nice seam along here, and then put this panel on with this panel all in one section. So that way I get this here seam right nice. I can get a nice plug weld going on in here. so that all looks nice and up along here. So what I'm going to be left with is one big panel. That's all going to be all one piece, and I'm just going to have to weld it across here and then spot weld it down here. That's all I'm going to be able to do with it. So let's get started on that second panel. Okay, so now we got to get into making this piece here. And as you can see, we haven't got much left to the bottom side of this here. It's good over here, but there's nothing on this corner that we got to go by. Right? So the first thing I'm going to do is what I went and did is I cut out a strip of metal right here, clean it up both sides. I can't say that enough about cleaning up metal. Like, even if it's fresh metal and you're starting with it, always sand it before you start doing any work with it, because down the road, when it comes time to priming and painting, the panel will be already sanded. So what I'm going to do here first now is I'm going to turn around and make the lip that's going to mount to this here. All I'm going to do is I'm going to lay this against it, like so, and scribe it along there, and then I'm going to trim it all out to make it fit this body line here. So that way I know then I got my base, and my base is going to follow the shape of this here. All I did is I clamped it on both ends, over here and over here, and then I went ahead and took the marker and marked it along there. Just so I moved it out a bit so I know I got a straight edge going along there. So what I'll do now is I'll take the grinder down and I'll trim all this up and get it ready to fit on it. So here's what I got done. I got it trimmed up, and it's still a little bit long, sticking out a small bit, going along there. Then what I went and did, after I clamped it, I drilled 3 locations on it, and I actually joined it with clecos on the back side. Now that panel there is in the position where it's got to go. That will never have to move. I can test with it and do what I like with it, because I intend to weld these panels together on the car from the inside if possible. We'll see how that makes out. But now I got a reference point. Now all I'm going to do here now is to get the perfect shape here now is I'm going to take my grinder. I'm going to use the existing panel, and I'm just going to grind this along here, curve it up here, curve it down here, and get that shape to match the actual panel itself. And then that piece there is made. I know for a fact then that my seam, when it's done, will have a nice seam right along there. That's all I did. It's like I can rub my hand over that there now, and everything's nice and smooth. You can see it's a consistent line there. So that's my inner panel made, and that's already put in place. So now when it comes time to use that now, I can just clamp that on there and it's ready to go. So now what I got to do now is I got to build a panel. This one over here, this will be my next step now. I got to get a piece of metal to clean up for this over here. Now what I'm going to do here, I have a repair up here. I'm going to do that separate, and quite possibly do that repair separate as well. I'm going to take this just below that, or probably right on that. Yes, I'll take it right on that there. And I'll cut a piece out to go straight across like that. I'm trying to keep it half low as I can from out the panel, because all the rust is down here. And like that repair there, the rust is there. I don't want to go getting in and making steps and everything in the panel. I'm trying to keep a straight line on it. So maybe I'll just take it straight across there. So let's get a panel made for that now. So here's what I did. I measured up over here past everything, and I cut it off. I'm going to be cutting this on an angle here after the fact to make that lip up. I don't like going across into that. I like going 90 degrees on a wheel lip like that. But what I did is just cut a piece a little bit wider and whatnot. Now, when I set this up, I'm not covering up that hole. I wasn't concerned about it. It just seems like I'm bringing it up way too high when it does it. I'm going to fix that hole first. But what I did is I mounted this panel, found 3 locations that I mounted it, and what I did is actually mounted lower. There's the bottom there, okay? So this is about 3/4 of an inch lower than what it should be. And the reason for that is that I want to attach it to the other panel with a few more clecos so I can get the panel figured out right. Now that I got the panel removed, the problem I got is this here is going to be my way to fit this panel in place. So I need to cut this out of the way. Now, I need to know where this is to. All I did is I went up to a reference point here and measured down to the actual where the lip is to. And I found out it was an even 13 inches. So you can do that in metric, whatever way you want to do it, but I'm doing it the old-fashioned way, 13 inches. So now I got a reference point that when I fits this panel in place, I'm going to cleco it on here, and I'll know how high up it got to come for it to fit to that there. So here's what I went and did. I turned around and I trimmed up this section here and got it out of the way because it was bad in here and I wanted to remove that lip, so I got all that gone. And then I went ahead and I fit the panel in place. I came over here and lined up a few things. Took this measurement here, from here to here is 13, from here to here is 13. I got the measurements set up. And then I come over here and I put a couple of clicos in here. That's all I went and did with that. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to clico that other piece onto here, where it was 2 before, and I'm going to drill a couple of holes here and clico it onto that panel there. I'm trying to get this in a position where I can turn around and I got everything fitting where it should be, and then I can start working on this outer edge here. Now, I just clicoed that back up in place here. I clamped it in place here and clicoed in 3 locations on this bottom panel. So now this is all one piece now. The reason why I'm doing it this way here is because I want this panel and this panel to remain in the same location at all times. If you try to piece it together by just making the top to try to fit the bottom, you're going to be all over the place with it. At least now I got this rigged up so that it actually is a part of it temporarily until I get farther into it and I get everything welded up. But all I'm concerned about right now is getting this section here designed and made. So I can come up here and I'll cut this off, trim this off a bit here to get it out of my way and work on getting this body line, because this is crucial right here, getting this body line to flow nice from one to the other. All right, so I got it all go back in place again, and I trimmed it up along here and I trimmed it up along here. Then what I went and did is I went up here and I just start running tape down through this here, trying to get that to flow nice. And as you see, I got multiple layers on it because I didn't like the angles of it, and I played with it and I played with it. I took this in and I took this in up here so that it actually would flow through the panel, so I can actually see which way it's going to go. And I'm happy with the way that's shaped there now as it goes up through there. So now I'm going to take the marker now and mark that, and that will be my point of where it'll roll in and roll around. And I'll take it off now and get ready to shape that. So I went ahead and I marked that spot where I go along here. Now what I need to do now is I got to roll this down this way here, and then this got to roll back this way. And like probably the easiest way to do this here is you'd have a tipping die and you just run it through a bead roller, and what you call it. I'm not going to set one up for that because a lot of you guys haven't got bead rollers. I'm going to do this pretty basic now with basic tools, and all I'm going to use is the vise to shape it, you know, just the hammer, and just spend time at it, dialing it all up to get it to fit right. Okay, so let's set up here now. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to stick it in here and clamp it in the vise. Just take a small bit at a time, work my way through it. Alright, I got my old hammer out. I found this here was too long, too wide. I need something narrow. And all I'm doing is just raising it up about 1/4 of an inch and tapping it in. Just rotating it a bit at a time. Tipping die would be so much easier, but again, do we have a tipping die here now? Alright, well, I haven't got one set up. Most of you guys haven't got that anyway. You see the way that's rolling it around? I can work all that now. I got it the nice bead going along there. Now this end one here is tricky. I'm going to have to do this just manually. I'm going to have to bend it over and then dolly it after the fact. Main thing is I'm trying to get this little bead here first. And I'll just bend that over, like so. And then I'll dolly this corner in here. Now, as you can see, I got it in here. It's a little bit high here, but again, I'm going to have to work all this. You can see the marks never got on it, but I'll work all that out of it. Well, you can see up here now, just got to be rolled a bit more inside here. So this rolled edge got to go in a bit more. So I'll start working that to roll this edge in here. So this got a nice flowed rolled edge on it to roll through all that there. So I'll take that off now and start dialing that some more. I'm happy with that so far. Consider I'm doing a freehand. All I got done was I got my dolly clamped into the vise. There's nothing fancy about this dolly. This is the first tool I ever bought in my life. I bought this when I was about 15 years old and I still got it. It's an old cheap. Well, we had a Canadian Tire and I've got that since I'm about 15. Well, first tools I ever bought, that and the body hammer. But you can see that got a nice round edge on it here. Rolls around, so I'm using that to shape it. Using a straight edge to sharpen up and make that consistent line. Remember I had a high spot there, so I got it out of it there now. Okay. Alright, after hammering this a few times now, dollying it and using the ball peen hammer and the dolly on it a few times, back and forth, clamped it on, chest fitted, done some more work on it. It's got a rough finish on it right now, but one of the advantages of using the 18 gauge is that a lot of that will sand out, right? You can sand a lot of that damage out of it that you're doing the hammer forming and stuff like that on it. The hammer marks. What I'm going to do now is I got it fitting where I'm happy with it. So now the next thing I'm going to take this whole panel off and put it together, and I'm going to start making this here, part of this here, from the seam. Now here I got it off on the bench, and you can see now there's still a bit of a gap there. So I'm going to hammer all this here, I'll dolly all this. I can actually use this as a dolly, and I can hammer and shape this here into this panel here. Because when you flip this over now, you look along here, you see how nice it fits all the way along here. But it's just in that corner that it needs to be worked. So I'm going to work that corner there now so I can get ready for the next piece. Do you remember this piece that I made earlier? And that'll fit right in there. And what I'll do now is I'll clamp that in place there, put the cleat goes back in place, and then I'll weld it along there. And that will give me my seam. And you can see how nice that fits. Huh? It's just over here. I got to dolly the small bit in this cornered edge to make that work fit nicer. All I went and did is I used this as my dolly and I hammered in around this edge. You see how much nice that fits now and coming up along here. When I flip it over, it fits really nice there now, along that edge there. The key to all this stuff here is don't ever overthink this section here. All this here still needs to be worked. All I'm working on is getting this one little spot right here. That's all I'm working on so I can weld this on across here. Then I know I got my mating points the same on both of them. I'm going to fit that in place there, like so. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to weld that right onto that panel there. So all I went and did now is I welded that panel to the outer panel. Over here I left this corner opened. I want to dolly it a bit better, but I need to cut off the outer lip first before it does that. So I'm going to leave all the overlap piece over here for now, because a lot of you are wondering, because I made this fit the outside of the other panel, and now this thickness of this is on this here. This panel is going to have to come inwards when it's all said and done. And that's the reason why it's done like it is, because it is overlapped on the outside now, so it's got to come in the thickness of the metal after the fact. So these are not the actual locations. Again, like the other panel, I'll take these out, slide it in a bit, and that's where it will go. But for now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to trim off this front corner section here and cut it down so that I can actually dolly this corner and get this corner fitting nice. So here it is now, the panel's removed. Okay, you can see where it's tack welded through the outside. And there's the overlap on the bottom where it was clamped down before. You can see where it was clamped down. And so now all I'm going to do is I'm just going to trim up this upper corner here off for now, because I want to get this here corner to fit snugger in here. It's not bad there really, but I'm going to trim it off to about right here and just trim that back. I trimmed off that corner piece, and then I took the hammer then and I struck it in here to tighten up that spot, and then I'm going to go ahead now and I'm going to weld this on the inside here. I went ahead and I welded up this corner here, got that all done right nice. Then I went ahead and said shag it, and I went and welded all the rest of it up too. So what I'm going to do here now is I'm going to cut this off all together and finish this off out here. I've talked about finishing panels off and starting with one piece, take two pieces, weld them together and make them one. I'm here thinking about it, and a lot of stuff I do as I go. Like, I never had a game plan. When I started this panel, I just thought about it as I was going. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim this off here. I'm going to dress that outer edge and get everything fitting. And then I'm going to mount it to this here, and I'm going to plug weld it across top here. Have that done. So there I went ahead and I got it all grind and dressed on the outside now as well. And what I went and did, I just turn around and I just put them back in them Cleco holes that I had rigged up before. Okay, and you can actually see the thickness of the metal now where it sticks out a small bit. Okay, but it's got a nice seam going right along there. Nice and clean. And all I got to do now is I'm going to let go of these Clecos and slide it in a small bit and clamp it with a pair of vice grips. There it is. Nice and smooth, nice tight lip. See, learn that like a factory seam. Up here I got to do a little tiny bit of work on that corner there. When I grinded it off, I might have grinded a bit too much there, lost the edge, the flow. But if you look up across it, and you look down it, you can see how nice that fits. So I got that flowing nicer along down along there now. I welded that up, as you can see me there, and I grinded that corner so both of them met nice. I'm here contemplating on what to do next. Over here I got to figure out how I'm going to mount this. If I'm going to cut it down through here and weld it, but then I'm going to be getting into this spot here, trying to weld it and ruin that. I might end up putting a flange on this end here and spot welding along the back. Up here front, I got the wheel lip. I got to do some welding in here for this lip to go up around. So I think what I'm going to do first is I'm just going to trim up the inside. I got it marked. Trim up this panel here, and then I'm going to put 3 new Clecos in it, in the new location where it mounts, and I'm just going to temporarily mount it for now until I get this here figured out and this here figured out. So I haven't got no work down here. All my grinding and everything will be finished in here. So when I clamp the two of them together and weld it, I haven't got to worry about getting in here to grind and end up having to weld this spot here when I start welding this corner. Okay, I got ahead of myself. I went ahead and I trimmed up that lip, and I re-drilled 3 locations, 3 new locations. You can see the X's where the old ones were too, for the 3 Clecos along there. So that way it's all mounted in place. Then I went ahead and I mounted it back on the car again, or on the box I should say. And you can see it there how it fits now. I'm going to come around this corner here and replace this flange right here, and make a flange up to put right onto it, and weld it on there. And then over on this side here, I'm going to actually make the flange and everything down here, so that'll go on there as well. So I'm going to don't get carried away with yourself. I'm going to start up here, finish this end off first, have this done. I'm going to mark this now with a marker, and then I'm going to take it off and trim it up, and I'm going to actually put a lip in there so that can fold in through there. Now I went ahead and I trimmed it up, and what I'm going to do now is I got this piece of scrap steel here. I'm going to weld a lip onto there, weld it on the inside, weld it on the outside, grind and dress it, and get that section there finished. Now I went ahead And I welded that piece in, and I grind and dressed it, as you can see there. Okay, so that's all done. So I got that panel made. Now up here, before I actually put the end on it, when I had it on last time, I scribed it here. What I got to do now, this is not going to fit now because this lip is in the way. So I'm going to cut this in through here and just chop a bit of this out of the way so that the panel fits on there. I'm not too concerned about this right yet because I'll be doing the cutting board and all that anyway. So I'm just going to remove a bit of this, doing our last test fit. Okay, so I'm happy with that. Got it all grinded off and dressed in there, and I got a fit. I trimmed it off inside there, you can see. And I got that fitting better. And so now I'm happy with the way all this fits up here. So I got this done. This here is left a little bit wide in the inside here. This is wider. And I need to bend it a small bit, but I'll do that when I goes to weld it all together. I'll fit all that and I'll dress it up after. It's always best to leave that a little bit longer. Don't worry about perfect fit until it's pretty well on the vehicle, and you can do it all with a grinder then after the fact. So now it's time to move on and do this piece back here. I'm going to scribe this across here now. I'm going to cut this off, clean this off, drill out the spot welds here, remove this piece here. I'm not too concerned about drilling out spot welds. I'll probably just chunk this off it, and I'm going to weld a piece. If you can see, it's pretty well the thickness of the metal going across. So I'm going to weld it, lay the piece of metal on it this way here, and weld it down along there, and then just let it go in there, and I'll trim it off, and I'll put a few spot welds in it, and I'll have that spot weld. That way I can dress this corner down here and have it done, and I haven't got no effects of anything from down below. One thing I will point out is this here is not straight edge. As you can see, this is pretty straight here, and I got to pull in on it a small bit. This here panel has got a curvature to it this way here. So when I make up this piece here, I got to put a bit of a curvature in it so it'll sit properly here. All I did is I got a flat piece of steel that I'm going to use for that end cap, and I got it marked right here. This is a straight edge here. I want this to crown a very light, so I'm going to grind this back here and grind this back here just so there's a very slight concave on it, and you'll actually see it because this is actually the same distance right across here now. So I'm going to put a bit of a crown on it first. You can see I just grinded it back and it faded out and it faded out. Now I got a little crown on it. Now I can use that to cap the end of it. Next to see now that it actually got a crown on it. So I'll just put that in there, line that up on that end there, right? And I'll just roll it in around there as I'm welding it. Now welded it on the inside. Yes, that's still hot. Welded it on the inside. Okay. Welded it on the outside, and I grind it off. As you can look at it now, you can see a very slight contour on it. Just the little details that you look for, and makes all the difference in the world. Now I'm going to go over and clean up the back of the cab and get that ready to test fit. Alright, all you can see, I got a mark there. I chopped it across, straight in there, and then all I did is I just come down here and pried it back a bit, and there was 2 spot welds in it. I just grinded the heads up and chopped a piece of it out of the way, so I haven't got to worry about drilling anything out. So now I'm ready to test fit it because I want to get this edge straightened away. So I'll put the panel on it now and get this here ironed out. As you can see now, I got it all put in place there. I got to round this edge off a bit more because this here is rounder. That's fine. I can do that after the fact. But I just marked it here. You can see where I had the piece too long. I'm going to mark it here, and then it comes down here where this panel comes up and meets it. I'll mark it here and I'll draw a straight line and I'll cut that off there. So now I'm ready to take this panel and mount it permanently to the other one. Okay, so now I got this ready. I went and put some holes in this here, poked holes in them. I went the existing holes that I had originally, I went and put a spot weld hole on it. This is a new hole here, hold it all together. And I went ahead and I put the spot welds all the way along there to weld the 2 panels together. All I used was this cheap little Princess Auto Harbor Freight style hole puncher. It's powered by air. It just basically punches holes here. It's got a hole punch on one side and I got a step on the other. I never uses that. You can use it. Seen a lot of fellas using it installing panels. I don't like doing it that way. But it's just a simple little tool. If you haven't got that, all you got to do is just drill them out. Little, 3/16 bit or quarter bit or whatever to make the spot welds so you can weld them together. So now all I got left to do now is I got to prep this and prime it, put the primer on. All I use on it right now is a rust paint. The problem with these old vehicles back in the day is every time I take a panel apart, there is no paint between them, okay? This here is the existing piece that I chopped out, 3 layers, okay? Just 1 layer welded together, welded together. All these panels are, in between all of them is all bare metal. There's nothing between it. That's the reason why these trucks rusted out like they did. Back in the early days, with a lot of these things, with a lot of these trucks, they were assembled in the assembly line and then painted after the fact. Then when they got into this recycled metal and they start doing the same process in them, they run into these issues, and that's the reason why these early 70s imports rusted so bad. Okay, I got all that painted. All that is the rust paint. I got put on that there. And I clamped it together and I marked the end of it and I cut the end of it off. I put 3 holes in the end of it for the plug welds. I got that ready to go. Next thing I did is I come up here and you can see when I clamped it together, I marked it. Focus, there you go. I marked it where the spot welds are going. And what I like to do is this. I like to grind off that area. I like to get full penetration. I've had problems in the past trying to weld through primers and whatnot, and I just find you're not getting good penetration. You'll notice it when you start using a lot of weld through primers that you're not getting a very good weld, and it gets annoying after a while. I used a lot of weld through primers in the collision industry years ago and just had lots of headaches with it. I just decided not to use it, and all I use now is just probably a good rust paint in between it. You're welding 2 panels together, there's going to be an issue, even with weld-through primer. Weld-through primer slows it down, yes, but there's other consequences that I've always run into. So I'm going to clean all these up now and get it ready, clamp 2 of them together and spot weld them 2 panels together. Here you have it. I got them all welded up and grinded up, finished up them there. I went ahead then and I had them couple of holes that were in this here. I went ahead and welded them up. I know where they're to. Oh, they're down here. In the lower panels, I had remember where I had the clecos held in place. I got them welded up, and I went over here. Then I cleaned everything up, and I grind and dressed it all up. There you have one complete section done with a nice seam on it. It's a nice bead going right along that. You can look down that. It's nice and straight. Going down across it. It's nice and level both ways. Okay. All I need to do now is you look at it that way. It's a nice seam. It's a bit of work put into it. To this point now, I might have 16 hours into this, and I still got to install it. I still got to do some repairs on it. But you can see that the process of how I went about saving this seam. A lot of people just ends up welding over them, welding them up, all that, even fiberglass and filler over them. I never liked that. This here to me is going to have a more of a factory finish with the seam. I got it painted in there now from factory. Now this would be all seam sealed on the outside, and in here would be seam sealed as well. Now the trunk floor or the bed gets made, that will be mounted right here on top of this. So I'll just go in and I'll weld that on top of that there. That'll be the lip it'll rest on. So I won't be worried about that. But all I'm going to do now is I'm going to go over and install this now and see what it looks like. So there it is for the final fit. I got everything lined up there now and everything's fitting pretty good. I'm happy with it. All out on the back side here, all ready for the spot welds to come up through the back here. The corners, I got to trim this back a bit here so this will fall in flush because it's not exactly flush yet. I'll get that all flush. This is a thicker steel, so it'll grind flush. Out here, you'll notice that this here is bowed out a bit and you got to push in on it. I like doing it that way for the simple fact that when you're doing the cutting bolt, this here is trying to fight when you push in on it, so it wants to come back out at you again. If you set this up so that it's nice and flush and everything fits perfectly on there, when you start welding this will want to go that way. At least now, with a bit of a strain on it, this way here, it wants to pull outwards. So when I start welding this here, it's going to want to pull the panels this way. There's going to be a little bit of warpage and everything in there, but it's better to have the panel hanging off a small bit. Like, don't worry about trying to get that fitting perfect. You can see this like it over here as well. The same thing, if you look at it. It's a bit of a gap. And I'm doing it that way for the simple fact that when I go and clamps it on and start spot welding it, it'll actually pull the panel. So when the heat starts pulling away from it, it'll make it nice and straight. Well, that's the plan anyway. But you can see the seam there. Nice seam on it now. All the panels there, all that rusty panel, the wheel arch. All that's done. I'm going to come up here now and I'm going to cut this section out here so I can get this to fit nice before I does anything, because this is where I'm going to start to, on a cutter here, and get all this corner here fitting nice before I turn around and weld anything else in. But before I do any of that, I'm going to repair these 2 holes. I'll have that done over with. The wheel well comes along here and goes down here. I'm just going to cut a piece out of here and butt weld a piece in there. And weld that in and dress it and grind it before I put that panel in it. Well, don't that look lovely? Look. Done. Okay, had to put the bottom in the bottom of the wheel tub here as well. I got made up a piece for that and a lip onto that and welded that all together. I got that all grinded up and dressed. You can see I made up that panel there, fixed up. I just cut a strip out of it and welded in. I trimmed this up, fit this over here. And I cut off a portion of it just to get it out of my way so I can actually get access in here when I was working on it. Now, one last thing I'm going to do here is, you remember earlier I went and drilled out these spot welds, okay? Now, a lot of people just turn around now and they'll start bolting that panel back on. I've after fitting the panel on and putting a couple of clecos in it, so I have a location where it goes. These here now, if you start to try to weld these up with the plug welds in them, they're going to be a pain. The right time to weld these up here now is right now. I'm going to weld all these up here so they're flush, and that way I got a good backing for my plug welds to weld to. So I'll weld all these solid. A lot of people have, you know, sometimes you may have a lot of them to do, but trust me, it's a lot easier to weld these up now than it is to try to run a bit of wire through that, trying to fill up that hole. And a lot of times you can't get that thing behind it, like a piece of brass or something like that. So now's a good time to, while you can get at them, to weld them up. All I used on them was a pair of these pliers. You can pick these up, Princess Auto, or you know, any cheap place like that. And it just clamps on the back side of it like that there, and you weld through it, and you get it all welded up. Now it's time to get all them welded up, because you'll never get at them later on. So I'll grind them all up now. I went ahead now, and I turned around and I went and put a coat of black on all that. It's just put a lot nice heavy coat on it, sprayed all this in here nice and heavy. This will have to be seam sealed after the fact. It was all said no, but I got to weld on the floor pan first. I'm not going to do that, but anyway, so that's ready to go to fit on it now. I got a couple of spot welds got to go down through here. I'll show you why. Right here, you can see there's a panel here, and the spot welds comes down through here, so I got to put a few of them, so I'll mark them and drill them out. I got that all painted, and I got everything over here painted. Inside and out, I got to mark these and then do like I did showed before and just grind off the little spots where the welds are going. So I'm going to go ahead now and fit that panel on that and start welding that in. Alright, so I marked them 2 spots, I drilled them out, and then I clean up the back section where it's going to be welded on. And I got everything trimmed up now. The first thing you do before any time you want to fit anything like this here is your wheel lips are always important, okay? I've said this before in another couple of videos. What I'm going to do here now, I had this all cut to fit here. I'm going to weld all this up here first, get this started so this is done. Then I'm going to go back and then I'm going to start tack welding this in place to get it ready for the cutting butt. But I'm going to do this section here first. So all I did here is I welded up this here. Now when you're welding this type of stuff, start from the inside and work your way out. It's a lot easier to line this up now. If you got to pull out on it to get that to line up nice, do so. Because if you weld this out here first, out on the outside edge, and then try this in here, and this is lower or this is lower, it's kind of hard to work with. So always work from your inside out on your welds when you're doing edges like this, sir. So I went ahead now and I turned around and tack weld it in place, getting ready for the cutting butt. So all I'm going to do is remove the clecos. So I'm happy where there's 2 there now. So all I'm going to do is start over here now and start working my way across, do the cutting butt and tack weld it in place. And because the problem I got over here now is this here has to go back before I can weld the back side. Now I'm going to weld this all up here and finish this off here before I bother with any of these spot welds here or the spot welds here. Because I want, if I got to run into any issues, if it get the warps too much or whatever, I got an opportunity that if I got to, I can cut it back off the car again. I always try my damnedest to take my time and spot weld it so I don't get warpage, but it happens. I'm human. There you have it. It's all cut and what. You can see my fingers going down across that there. Very little edge there. Nothing. All the way along there. You see me pushing in on the lower panel. That's one of the reasons why I like it when the lower panel sticks out a bit. Now this here is pulled out, so when I start welding it's going to want to pull away from me. So it'll actually, this here will help control the warpage on the panel. Right? So I got all that done there now, to the point that I'm ready to solid weld all that up. So I'm going to go ahead now, spot weld it across there every inch or so, then cool it off, spot weld it across there every inch or so, cool it off. Repeat that process until it's all welded up. So there it is, all butt welded in place. Took my time and feels really good, looks really good. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to sit down now and take my time and grind all that down smooth before I weld anything else up. I'm not going to weld none of these up yet, these here. And the ends, I'm going to weld them after the fact when I'm happy with this here. If I got to do any amount of work to it or anything, like I said, it's just a safe feature to get into. But that's it. I just took my time. I say I was about half hour, 45 minutes, I'd say, welding that up, cooling it off, welding it, cooling it, welding it, cooling it. I went ahead and I grinded it all off. I got a couple of spots here now. I'm going to go back and I'm going to re-weld. And like, I don't try to work the welds too much. I try to work from this metal up to this, and I just touching this on the top side. I'm just working my way up, and I comes across any spots there where I find that it takes too long for it to cut back, and I know there's a low spot there. I'll stop and I'll go back and I'll re-weld them again. That's all I do with them there. So, but I'm pretty happy with it. Came out pretty good. So I'll go back now and I'll weld all them up and grind them up. There you have it, all welded up. Never say it was repaired. All been grinded off. I've done a few spot welds there, and I come back here and I've done a few spot welds back here, grinded them all up and filled in the holes where I had the clinkos in it, and grind it all up and dress this edge here so it all just flows into each other. These are the little details here that you got to always go after, is these rolled edges and an edge like that there. Make sure like the weld is across here, so you know you got a nice even edge there, make it look like it's never been repaired. The warpage is really well, pretty good. I'm pretty happy with it. There's a couple of small things there I've seen. The wheel lip all looks good. I got it all welded up underneath. Right, all that is done. As you can see, I put that on it. It's all pretty good there. There's a couple of low spots there. You can see there, like I'm human. You can sit down and dolly all that up if you want. But it's good all along there. Going right along the whole works of it. I'm happy with it, more than happy with it, because I expected this here to drop really bad. But like I told you, when you bring up the panel and there's a strain on the panel outwards, leave it, because that's the reason why this managed to stay as good as it is, because it's having a hard time wanting to be pulled inwards because the panel is forcing it outwards, which is a good thing. And as you can see, real nice seam. Factory line. You could have welded all that up and be done with it, but to me that looks more factory to me, because that's the way they came. I prefer that look. Even when it comes time to fill this panel, I would not fill that. I'd clean all it up and keep digging it out, and I'd end up putting seam sealer in it, make it look factory. The inside, I had good penetration. All I did is I just grinded it up. See the panel there? The bottom panel is a bit hard than the top panel because that's 18 gauge and that's 24 gauge. But as you can see, it's pretty good. I'm not going to get into metal finish and any of that. You can just clean it up after the fact. All that got to be seam sealed, and I don't know what he's doing inside the box. But that's it. That's how you go about repairing that rust and maintaining the body seams. Anyway, that's it for that one. I hope the tips were good, and until next time. Right, all that's done. Yeah. So, what are you saying, Peanut? Yep. How you doing? Huh? Say hello there, buddy. Oh, you want to go in, do you? Peanut. 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 Peanut.